Dear friends, this presentation argues a literary approach to Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy. Rudolf Steiner emphasized many times the importance of German early Romantic literature and the literature of German idealism. He placed enormous emphasis on the poet-scientist Goethe, and equally enormous emphasis on the early Romantic poet, scientist, philosopher Novalis, whom Rudolf Steiner repeatedly hailed as the herald of anthroposophy. You will notice, however, that in the title of this presentation, I put the word Novalis in quotes. When Rudolf Steiner refers to Novalis, he is not referring exclusively to the historical figure Friedrich von Hardenberg, 1772-1801, who gave himself the pen name Novalis when he came to his maturity as a poet. Rather, Rudolf Steiner is also referring to a supersensible entelechy, Novalis, an eternal individuality whose prior significant incarnations, according to Rudolf Steiner's reading of the Akashic Chronicle, include Adam from the Book of Genesis, Phineas from the Book of Numbers, Elijah from the Book of Kings, John the Baptist, the artist Raphael, and the poet Novalis. In this presentation, I will highlight Rudolf Steiner's reading of the eternal individuality Novalis and his reading of the poet Novalis. Rudolf Steiner conflated these two readings to provide justification for the founding of the first Anthroposophical Society in Cologne, Germany in 1912. I will note the critical role that Rudolf Steiner's partner, Mari von Sievers, played in this project. In an essay written to commemorate the last address by Rudolf Steiner, Mari von Sievers remarked that Rudolf Steiner ended his famous last address, given on the eve of Michaelmas, 1924, by once again pointing to an important, if not, quote, the most important mystery in all his teaching, which she called a red thread that ran through all of Rudolf Steiner's revelations of wisdom, the mystery of Novalis Raphael John. This red thread had its beginning in the very dynamic, formative theosophical years of the anthroposophical movement, 1902 to 1914. It is important to keep in mind that Rudolf Steiner entered the Theosophical Society as a reformer. He stated this forthrightly on day one, and he always maintained that he only became involved with the Theosophical Society because it was the only community that was receptive to him. I did not seek out the Theosophical Society, Rudolf Steiner commented. It may sound silly, but the Theosophical Society sought me out. At the very beginning of Rudolf Steiner's teaching activity within the context of the Theosophical Society in 1901-1902, and that would be just 100 years after the death of the poet Novalis. At the very beginning of that activity, Rudolf Steiner began to present what he called an apology or a justification of Christianity. These lectures attracted the appreciative attention of German theosophists who felt that the Anglo-American Theosophical Society put too much emphasis on Asian wisdom teachings. A key individual at this moment in Rudolf Steiner's destiny was Marie von Sievers. She was not yet Rudolf Steiner's wife. They married in 1914. Rudolf Steiner was married to another woman at this time. Rudolf Steiner quickly identified Marie von Sievers as a unique partner and collaborator. She was the destiny individual who prompted him to begin his project of revising the core texts and teachings of Theosophy. In effect, the individual who encouraged him to begin his mission as a teacher of esoteric Christianity within the context of Theosophy. She did this, Rudolf Steiner stated, when she asked him this critical question on November 17, 1901. Might it be possible to impart spiritual wisdom in a way more in keeping with European spiritual life and with consideration of the Christ impulse? Having received this destiny question, Rudolf Steiner felt that he could now do more than just present an apology or justification of Christianity within Theosophy, as he had been doing. Already active as a theosophist and well respected within the Theosophical Society, Marie von Sievers offered much that recommended her for this revisionary project. She was an aristocratic woman of elegance, intelligence, artistic talent, social administrative skills, one whose background and privilege had given her access to the cultural centers and treasures of Europe. Her sensibility, refinement, language skills, and enthusiasms complemented Rudolf Steiner's unique gifts. A distinguishing feature of Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy as a spiritual path for the modern age is the importance that it places on art, poetry, literature, and artistic activity. This emphasis was new within the context of Theosophy, and it foregrounded Rudolf Steiner's understanding of the turn to aesthetics that we find throughout the writings of Novalis and his early Romantic contemporaries, for whom, quote, the philosophy of spirit is an aesthetic philosophy. No surprise, then, that the sublime poetry of Raphael's artwork and the magical idealist poetry of Novalis, both of whom are aspects of the eternal individuality known as Novalis. No surprise, then, that the individuality Raphael Novalis features so prominently in Rudolf Steiner's philosophy of spirit. Marie von Sievers greatly contributed to this emphasis on art, beauty, poetry, and artistic creativity. Moreover, she recognized early on that Rudolf Steiner had a genius equal to or exceeding the genius of Theosophy's founding sage, H.P. Blavatsky. She saw Rudolf Steiner as a world teacher. Rudolf Steiner quickly recognized Marie von Sievers also. When offered the job of General Secretary for the German section, Rudolf Steiner accepted the position under two conditions. Number one, that he must speak his own mind, and number two, that Marie von Sievers must join him as his partner and collaborator. Rudolf Steiner's reading of the Christ mystery rests upon his reading of Novalis, and this reading evolved in collaboration with Marie von Sievers during the formative years of the Theosophical decade. Marie von Sievers typically recited Novalis's poetry as a complement to Rudolf Steiner's lectures on the life and significance of the poet. Together, they highlighted the poet Novalis' writings and themes. A high point of this collaborative project occurred in 1908-1909 when Rudolf Steiner revealed the karmic biography of Novalis, a revelation that Marie von Sievers called a red thread, or, as I mentioned, the most important mystery in all his teaching. Here is an important statement by Marie Steiner from her memoirs, 1952. Quote, "It was during the time 1908-1909 that Rudolf Steiner encouraged me to step out more and more with recitation. At that time, I was trying to wrestle my way through to Novalis. I told him that it would not be easy for me, that I had not yet found the key to Novalis. He advised me to put myself in the mood of the holy nuns. Well, the nuns did not help me. On the contrary, I did not know what to do with them. Then, suddenly, it all brightened up. Raphael's paintings surrounded me. The child shone in his mother's arms with his world-apprehending eyes. I said to Rudolf Steiner, 'The nuns didn't do it for me, but someone else came to my assistance, Raphael. Now Novalis is completely transparent to me.' A glow came over Rudolf Steiner's mild face. A few days later, he gave us, for the first time, the Novalis, Raphael, John the Baptist, Elijah secret." Now, it is important to keep in mind that this unique karmic reading of Novalis occurred in the context of the impending split of the German section from the Anglo-American Theosophical Society. These are the years of the so-called Bodhisattva conflict, which involved the youth Krishnamurti and Krishnamurti's promotion to status of world savior, and the Star of the East controversy, the Leadbeater scandal, and Rudolf Steiner's responsive lectures concerning the reappearance of the etheric Christ. All these topics and others contributed, but it was Rudolf Steiner's unique reading of Novalis, which Rudolf Steiner had arrived at in collaborative activity with Marie von Sievers, that provided the decisive literary spiritual justification for the founding of the first Anthroposophical Society in December 1912. And how did Rudolf Steiner's unique reading of Novalis accomplish this? Madame Blavatsky, the founding sage of Theosophy, had justified the truth claims of Theosophy by appeal to a lineage of supersensible masters who guided and oversaw the Theosophical movement. Masters of Asian wisdom traditions held precedence. To revise Theosophy for Central Europeans, Rudolf Steiner sought to identify and prioritize an equivalent lineage of Western masters who worked in service to the Christ. Rudolf Steiner accomplished this in his first Theosophical decade with Marie von Sievers' help. His resultant Christology is unique and decentering within the context of Theosophy, and one might well argue that it is unique and decentering in respect to historical Christianity. According to Rudolf Steiner's Christological narrative, the decisive event of the mystery of Golgotha could not have occurred without the aid and assistance of other exalted spirit beings, A suitable physical body for the solar Christ avatar had to be prepared on earth over long periods of time, and a suitable understanding for this mystery had to be fostered in human souls. The eternal individuality known as Novalis worked throughout previous incarnations to prepare the way for an understanding of the Christ mystery and for the descent of the solar Christ avatar at the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist in the Jordan, according to Rudolf Steiner's reading of the Akashic Chronicle. Rudolf Steiner also emphasized that the eternal individuality known as Novalis will continue to work in harmony with other exalted spirit beings to further a future understanding of the Christ mystery for the rejuvenation of the earth, a Christic phrase and impulse that the early Romantic poet Novalis notably celebrated. To give some flavor, here is a characteristic jotting by Novalis from his notebooks. The heart is the key to the world and to life. One lives in this helpless situation to love and to learn of one's dependency on others. Through imperfection, one becomes open to the influence of others, and this openness is just the point. In sickness, others can and should help us. So Christ, from this standpoint, is the key to the world. Here and in very many other similar texts throughout the poetry, novels, and fragments of Novalis, we find a fascinating intersection of German early Romantic literature with the literature of Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy. And specifically, we encounter the decisive influence of the magical idealist poet Novalis, the only true poet of the Romantic school, as Georg Lukács expressed it. Novalis, the herald of anthroposophy, per Rudolf Steiner. Novalis, with his characteristic summons that the world must be romanticized. To sum up, the poet Novalis and the eternal individuality Novalis contribute equally to justification of the anthroposophical movement during its development within theosophy. The Romantic call for a new mythology and for an aesthetic philosophy is echoed by Rudolf Steiner's Christology lectures, in which he celebrates the eternal individuality Novalis. Moreover, by means of their interpretive and creative reading of the biographies and achievements of the artist Raphael and the poet Novalis, Rudolf Steiner and Marie von Sievers brought to the forefront the importance of art, literature, poetry, artistic activity, and the humanistic, life-affirming disciplines that are foundational for a modern, postmodern path of spiritual development that speaks to the human being outside the context of religious orthodoxy, social political ideologies, or revealed truths. I'll close with a poem by Novalis that Rudolf Steiner celebrated at the 1912 event, a poem that he recommended as a motto for the anthroposophical movement. This poem contains all the secrets of Novalis, according to Ludwig Tieck, Novalis's best friend. This is my translation. When number, math, and figures are no longer keys to every creature, when those who sing and kiss know more than learned scientists, when the world takes joy to be alive, and in rejoicing breathes and thrives, when once more shadow and light espouse the birth of true insight, and in poetry and story the human being grasps the world's eternal meaning, then forth before a secret word shall fly, that thing of falsehood, error, lies. Thank you for your attention, and for your interest in Romanticism, and for your interest in the section for the Literary Arts and Humanities. Good night.